Just a heads up before that nice Alex voiceover chap tells you who produces this here show. For those in parts of the UK now going into or already in countrywide lockdowns again, this episode was recorded just prior to the school half-term holidays, when we were travelling reasonably freely and looking forward to the odd bit of winter work, as you'll judge by one of the questions. Of course, things can change reasonably rapidly these days, and this episode reflects that in every single way. If you're in another country where lockdown has been a feature of your life or an impending one is about to be announced, we both feel your pain. Keep the faith. Remember what you do, what we do, if you're a professional, is important, no matter what you're told. Even by government, it would seem in some cases. We're writing through our pictures history of our family, of other people, or of course of ourselves. Big love from both myself and Kev in a genuine, not just said because it looks good on social media kind of way.
The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production.
Kev, I know this is not the book today. What book have we got, by the way?
Today we've got William Gedney.
All right.
Only the Lonely.
Only the Lonely. Oh, there's a song.
Yeah.
Chris Porsche. I'm doing an interview on...
God, that can't be his name, Porsche.
It is. Porsz.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah. So he is... I'm interviewing him for Photography Daily. And he's done this book called Reunions. This is a brilliant book. I'm not doing a book review, but I just wanted to just throw this in front of you, see what you think straight away. So he lives in Peterborough. He's a paramedic. And so what he did, he's prolific. He is described as prolific. He was spending all his money on film from his work as a paramedic, or an ambulance driver, as it would have been called then, wouldn't it, in the 80s? What are you, paramedic? What's one of those? Ambulance driver. Oh, I know. And so he spent all his money on film for his cameras. And he was taking, at some stage, between 200 and 300 pictures. I don't know if that's a day or a week. Must have been a week. Maybe a day. I don't know.
Those ambulance drivers earned a lot of money in them days.
Yeah. So he took all these wonderful pictures, documentary pictures. That sort of picture that's right up your street anyway.
Yeah, I love it.
So it's a boyfriend and girlfriend, or it could be a young husband and wife, kissing each other goodbye at Peterborough Station in the early 80s. Looking at it. Looks like an early 80s picture.
Yeah.
So he made all these pictures, and then... years later, he thinks, I wonder what all those people are doing now.
Yeah.
So he becomes a private investigator, effectively, and goes and finds all these people that he photographed, that he didn't have names for, by the way, or model releases or anything like that. He found them again and photographed them in the same places, but only this time in colour.
Love it.
So all his old pictures are in black and white, and the new pictures are in colour. That's the. Oh no, actually no, that's not. Well, yeah, that is pretty much that's the story. Yeah, mostly. Yeah. So, but this one, House Fire, 1980.
Yeah.
So he took that picture in 1980, and then he went and found all the people that were affected by that and put them in front of the same house now, being rebuilt, in 2016.
Incredible, isn't it? And you know the lesson from this, I'm looking at you talking about that book and looking into it, and I'm thinking, how many times, and I'm including myself in this, in fact I'm mostly talking to myself, do I sit there thinking, I really want to do this particular project, it doesn't matter what the project is, project, and then I never do it.
Yes.
Never do it. I sit there lamenting, rubbing my fat belly, thinking about my gout. Yeah.
Happy FujiCast Day.
Yes.
The FujiCast.
Good morning, everybody.
Welcome along to the FujiCast, you and your questions from our electronic mailbag, and of course also through the FujiCast private Facebook group that you're very welcome to become a part of. If you want to send a mail in the old-fashioned way, hey, this is funny. The old-fashioned way. What? By letter? No, not by letter. By pigeon? No.
By ambulance driver.
By ambulance driver. By email. Oh, that's the old-fashioned way of doing things, isn't it? Click at fujicast.co.uk is still the address. Click at fujicast.co.uk. Thank you to those of our friends who are now supporting us on Patreon, which for the price of a coffee keeps the show growing, but most importantly, keeps it going. And if you're one of our patrons, of course, you occasionally, not all the time, get bumped to the front with your questions as well. Kev's Book of the Week, as you heard, coming up as well. Right. Shall we? You're looking very confused. You're looking at your Del Boy machine.
It's just epidemic, isn't it?
Are you going to go
so
first?
Fortuitous. Yes, why not? Why not? Cameron French says, this could be for Kevin or Neil. How has photography changed you? Not necessarily from a business perspective, i.e., I make this much money, I shoot this many weddings a year. He obviously wrote this a long time ago. But how has it changed you personally? Do you feel that the focus on observing moments when shooting, say, weddings, has impacted how you parent, how you interact with others, how you see the world? That's a lot of questions.
I've got to say it doesn't change at all the way I parent. No. How does it affect me the way I see things?
Have you never thrown a camera at one of the kids?
No, I threw one at the television when Arsenal were losing. Come on, boys! Heaven's sake, you're always in transition. What's going on? Wenger out. I don't know. How's it changed? I suppose I'm more observational. Generally, I think 15 years ago I wouldn't have thought in pictures as much as I do now. I think we all do that, don't we? To an extent, to a larger extent or not, that we start to see light. And you will. I do. I walk along and I see a pool of light and think, "Oh, that'll make a cracking picture." Whereas I wouldn't have done that 15 years ago. It's changed in that respect. I think I've become more empathic as well.
Yeah, I think so too. And I also,
that's weddings for you.
Yeah, I think. I always find myself in like supermarkets and stuff like that thinking, oh, that'd be a great picture.
Yeah.
Not so much about the light, but
a par-esque moment.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah. That's what I love.
I said that's true. You do see more par-esque moments.
Yeah, you do see more observations of life, I think, if you're a photographer.
I was down in Swanage with the Outlaws, and that's a very 90s phrase, isn't it? All right, Rodney. And I went off for a little walk because I was recording a photo walk edition for Photography Daily, but I saw something I wouldn't usually have picked up. I'm sure there was just 4 people sat cowering under cover because it was pizzoling with rain, and I looked at them and I thought, oh, you look fantastic, as a framed up family. I even went to talk to them and said, we're staying here till it stops raining.
Did you ask them before you took the picture?
No.
Did you go and speak? Did they see you or something?
I took the picture, and then I thought, actually, I think you're quite interesting as well. So I went to talk to them, and they did then ask me, why are you taking pictures? But at that point, we just got into a conversation. And I said, where have you come from? We come from Nottingham, right? We're staying here till it stops raining.
They're still there now, are they?
They're probably still there. Yeah. So it's changed me in that respect. Yeah, observational.
I tell you what has changed me is the people I've met, for sure. I've met.
Do you mean the opportunities of people you've met?
Well, no, not necessarily. But so for example, last week we had Ziza Cruz Bacani on the show. Or was it the week before?
No, that was the week before. These weeks go so quickly. Yeah.
And things like she said during that interview that the most important thing that anybody ever said to her was, don't look down on people, but also don't look up at them.
Oh, that was a brilliant phrase.
Yeah.
Love that.
And so things like that, I think, are important.
Have you actually applied that in your life?
I'd like to think I'd try and do that. Yeah. Well, there was that conversation we had just before we went on air that I think didn't really apply. But mostly, yeah. No, I do like to think I'm quite a level person. However, but the thing is, the point is that I then passed that mantra onto Rosa. Yeah. And I said, look, it's really important. This is a really, really interesting thing to think about when if you're in school and people are saying nasty things about you or whatever, then sometimes you need to think, actually, what are they doing? What's happening in their shoes?
Do you think you've got that through being a photographer, though?
No, but I think I don't, no, not necessarily, but I think that, generally seeing and meeting other people and what they look at, and, just pick it like, so this William Gedney book today will, make me think about things a little bit. I think that's definitely what's happened to me.
Do you ever regret becoming a photographer?
Well, no, that's a very, very tricky subject.
Worm can open.
I don't regret changing careers as I did. However, had I stayed where I was, I'd be retired and probably have a house in Magaluf.
Yeah, Magaluf. What was choose Magaluf?
Don't know.
All places.
Wherever. But yeah, no.
Hang on, Magaluf's nice, Neil. Oh, sorry, it is.
Yeah, I've never been there. I don't regret it. No, absolutely not. I regret some of the things I've done during that journey. Like,
what do you mean, business decisions?
No, like podcasting. And
you're so horrible.
No, I don't. I love podcasting. And yeah, certain things, like for example, in the first couple of years, I worked way too many weddings, didn't charge enough.
But you had to do that to establish yourself.
Yeah, but I feel like that I run the risk of...
Really?
I run the risk, but I didn't learn from those mistakes at the beginning, and I did in the end. And okay, fair enough. That's a hindsight thing.
Yeah.
But so no, I don't regret becoming a photographer. I do regret that I haven't become what I wanted to become.
What was that?
Nina Cherry. No, I would love to be what I always again, I'm being careful, but like a proper documentary photographer.
Okay. And you don't feel that being a wedding photographer, this is worms and cans. Oh, look, even Bouquet Chicken can see the worms. She's right in there.
Yeah.
But so do you feel that the wedding photography market hasn't provided you that opportunity?
Yeah, well, it has on a very personal scale for those people. And yes, I'm happy.
You don't feel, maybe you don't feel you've made a difference to the world.
Perhaps, yeah. Maybe there's that. There's that. What I'd love to get a phone call from somebody and says, right, you know what, Kev, we're I don't know, let's just say it's the election, a general election, your local our local MP is Conservative, doesn't really matter, but they need a photographer to follow him around for a week. You're the man for the job.
Hold on.
Is that James Gray?
Hello. Oh, it's Gemma. Says, could you follow her around for a week? She'd like that. If you could document her, she'd feel more special, and she'd stop having to call Adrian in.
Is the boiler broke again?
Boiler's broken. I know what you mean, though. I do know what you mean. I watched this. It was really harrowing program about the photographers and the journalists that were taken and killed by ISIS. Of course, making their stories. That's you're making a real difference, aren't you, by doing that kind of work?
Yeah.
But then you have to have a very different mindset as well to what I don't know, maybe you've got that mindset.
Well, it's not so much about the I always think about the Jazz Loft, Eugene Smith.
Oh, okay, all right.
Right, and
I did go to an extreme there.
You really did, but the thing is, there's a new Eugene Smith film coming out with who's that guy that all the women love acting as him? Anyway, we'll come to that when it's released. But like,
oh look, your phone's ringing. Who's offering you? What?
We're still recording.
Are you really?
Yeah.
You rang me though.
I didn't.
Didn't we have this conversation last week?
This is like
on the show.
This is like
we entered the twilight zone.
Yeah, this doesn't make any sense.
Okay. All right. Whilst I've got you, this out.
Okay, can everybody just stand by, everybody, because whilst Kev's got, yeah.
Can you have a discussion off podcast with Neil and see whether his boys have got any wetsuits he can borrow for a holiday?
I can tell you that now. No, they haven't. No.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Do you want me to answer anything while I'm on?
Well, you've been on twice already, actually. Funny enough. All right.
I meant to ask you last time, Kev. How's your rash?
Right, go in there.
Bye.
Oh dear. That's bizarre, isn't it? There's us doing a sketch with Gemma, then the real one calls up.
She ruined it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so I've totally forgot what we were saying now. Like
Eugene Smith.
Yeah. So just like being able to actually document a substantial topic.
Yeah,
but that's about opportunity as well as a body of work. But that's about opportunity as well as means and motive. So like a detective.
But going back to Chris Porsche, I mean, he didn't
exactly that.
When he stepped out to do those pictures, he had no idea he was going to do reunions.
No,
he just he was thinking, well, that's interesting. Let me get that.
Yeah, of course. And sometimes I sit there and I think, oh, well, yeah, but life gets in the way, But life is the most important thing.
Yeah.
You've got your kids and. You've got to go to Aldi and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, there was another book that Chris sent in here called New England. Now, look, these are just people outside their houses.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I know skit picking. I know this is the sort of stuff you love. I know you could pour through this. I know that.
Yeah.
You'd enjoy this. But
But
this is just 1980s Peterborough.
Of course, but the problem these days is, you go and do that now, and it's a whole... troublesome exercise.
Taking away the fact that some people might say, what you're doing, there's plenty of people that do street portraits that also don't get that.
True, but to have when you were pretty much the only person in town with a camera, you would get away with it far more, and that's often why you see the looks on people's faces are often a bit more interested because they're like, oh, look, he's got one of those posh camera things, and so you'll get different perspectives. But no, of course, everybody's got a camera, everybody's pointing iPhones at things and everything, and things, and that's not an excuse. It's the excuse is my own lethargy for doing stuff.
Yeah.
Just go and flog myself in the corner of the room now
with a damp copy of the Radio Times. But there are photographers. I spoke to one recently called Laird Kay, who's an aviation photographer. Now he didn't intend to. He's a proper plane geek. He loved planes. It was only because he took a couple of pictures that Lufthansa saw that said, "Oh, quite like that." That suddenly his career and life changed direction. That's the great thing about being a photographer, I think, because despite all this sort of, oh God, what are we going to do? There's no weddings. And I feel that way too. You can make an image, you can do something that entirely changes your life. And I think photography is one of those few industries, one of those few occupations where I think that creatively can just happen to you.
What I think's interesting about the book that you just showed, the
Chris Porsch, New England, or the other one, Reunions.
Well, both of them.
Yeah.
Both of them. Probably what wasn't going through their minds, certainly for the Reunions book wasn't, but probably what wasn't going through their minds at that point was, I'm taking these pictures because I want people to see them and get adoration. And that's a problem that we all suffer from it. I suffer from it myself as well.
Well, he wouldn't be making it for Instagram, would he?
Exactly, but this is the thing. These days, so many people are so much rush into, I need to get a great picture, I need to get on Instagram, and then they get really annoyed if somebody down thumbs it or whatever they call it. And, and the means and the message is slightly different. I feel like we're all in a rush with so many of us.
Yeah.
That are photographers, which is a good thing, and I'm including iPhone people and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and we're all screaming in the same barrel, and I feel like people like that who are actually outside the barrel, just getting on with their job, are the ones that finally bubble to the top of the barrel. So,
well, an interesting question.
Yeah, it was an interesting question.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Cameron.
Yours, I think, there. Kev?
Okay, TJ Ludek. If either of you had to pick up one camera and one lens to shoot for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Blimey. From the Fujifilm range, I don't own one, by the way, but because I've been using the X Pro one of a lot of late, I'd like an X Pro 3. And I think I'd put on a vintage lens. I'm assuming this is not that I have to go and then earn money with it.
I guess not,
because I've so enjoyed slowing down.
Given up on that.
No, money? What's money? Who cares? I've so enjoyed that slowing down process. I suppose that wouldn't be so. Maybe I'd stick on a what is it? The 16 to help me out, Kev. 16 to
55.
55. That one. 16 to 55 on an X Pro 3. I think I'd be made happy.
I think I would probably go X100V with the fixed lens, but if it had to be an interchangeable, I would go X Pro 3, and I would probably, even though I've got my love of the 23 and 56, I'd probably go 35, purely because if it's forever, 35 is wide enough to get a bit of storytelling in. It also has a little bit of depth of field for the odd portrait. Yeah. So I think I'd do that 35 1.4.
Yeah, that's the reason I've gone with the zoom, by the way, is because I'm thinking if this is for life, I do want a bit more of a range. I'm having to sort of make do a little bit there because I don't really use zooms that much unless I'm filming. Filming, I use them all the time. Stills, always prime.
Oh well, there you go, TJ.
Yeah, there's your answer. Here's one from Colin Bately. Morning, Kev. Morning, Neil. It's not necessarily morning. I mean, we always say morning, but it's not necessarily where you are. Could be any time of the day, couldn't it? Love the show, etc. My question is Lightroom related. I've taken in several videos on YouTube. Let me first take you through my workflow, which is probably not done properly, but it's going to help you understand the question. Files are imported. Are you ready? Stand by. Files are imported as RAF. I sort the wheat from the chaff. So that's normal. Yeah. Actually, and it rhymed as well. There we go.
Yeah, you're a poet and you just don't know it.
Yeah. Once I've sorted which files are worth editing, I'll let Kev's presets take up the hard work there and the strain. Once everything's edited, I like to keep the hard drive on my Mac as free from clutter so I can export the edited files as pegs into the folder that I want them to reside within Lightroom. Then I move the RAF files to an external drive. My problem is, and this has only just started to happen, that the edited files are not appearing in the Lightroom catalogue. Obviously, I can go to their location using Finder and add them manually, but surely this should happen automatically as they're being only really moved within the catalogue. So am I doing something wrong, or is it simply a setting that's been adjusted? Many thanks, and Auntie Nancy sends her regards. Gus Bately in Poole, which is where Auntie Nancy lives.
Auntie Nancy does live in Poole, and I think I think if I remember rightly, he's the bus driver, isn't he?
He is.
Yeah. Oh, bless. He probably sees more of Auntie Nancy than I do.
Yeah.
So I suspect what's happening here is, unless you're moving those images in the Lightroom catalogue itself, i.e. dragging them around in there, then it will lose the reference to it. So if you're moving the raw files, RAW files, via Finder, you're just dragging them to another location, then Lightroom will lose its reference, and you will need to just say, you only need to point to one, and then it will find all the rest of them. Easiest thing to do is right-click. Can you right-click on a Mac?
Yeah.
Right, so right-click on the one of the images that's missing and choose Show in Explorer.
Yeah.
Show in Finder in your case. Yeah. And it will show you where it thinks it should be. And if that's not where it thinks it should be, then that's the problem. And you can always just do Locate, and away you go. But if you move them in Lightroom, shouldn't be a problem. But if you're moving them outside of Lightroom, then Lightroom needs to be re-notified. That's probably what's happening.
Well, I upgraded my operating system recently, and Lightroom has been a proper pain since then, actually. And it won't. I can't import from. It sees the drive and it sees the folder, but then it won't see the images.
I read something about that.
Have you?
Yeah,
driving me nuts.
Isn't it something to do with the latest Mac OS update?
Yes.
Yeah, I read something similar.
No, I've got the latest Lightroom. So I made sure I've got the latest Lightroom, but Mac's not letting me see. Has anybody else had this problem? I know Kev won't, because he's a...
No, but I have read about it.
He's a Windows user, but you've read about it. Oh, okay. If anybody's had that problem, write me. Let me know. It's driving me mad. Every night I'm saying, look at this. And Sam doesn't know how to fix it, bless her. She just says, why don't you speak to Kev? So I don't know. Right, I think we've got time for one more question, then we're into the interview.
Okay, this is from Taiwan. Enrique Lin. Hi Neil, hi Kev. I absolutely love the podcast. It calms my soul every day as I listen to calms my soul. It's nice, isn't it? I like the sound of that.
Blimey.
Play a little bit of background music when I say that.
I'm trying to find some. All right, here's some background music. No, that's Australian. Oh, I do have this. What about this one?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's not very calming, because this is like Stranger Things.
It calms my soul every day as I listen to it
that's
before
spooky.
bed.
No,
Keep up the great yerk.
Hold on, we're in the upside down. We can't be in the upside down.
A fun question for you both. If cameras can speak to humans,
right,
but can only make sounds via its onboard parts, excluding the speaker, what would it sound like, and what will it say to you? Oh. Would you please make an impression? Thank you.
An impression of what a camera would sound like.
Okay, so if cameras can speak to humans,
yes, but
can only make sounds via its onboard parts, excluding microphone speakers, what would it sound like, and what will it say to you?
Well, there's just been a series of clicks and bings, isn't it, really? If they had a voice, I know what, they'd all have very different voices, wouldn't they? So an X Pro one would be like, I'm cool, don't need to prove anything today. Whereas an X100 would be a little bit too keen. An X100 would always be like that little dog that's going, let's get down. And whereas an XT2 would come along and say, let me through, here comes the serious guy. Yeah. Look at XH1 over there trying to pretend that he's got everything that an XT4's got.
Yeah, no one likes you. No one likes your XH1.
You're old. During the war, XH1 would say.
I always imagine my camera saying ouch every time I stick a memory card in.
Yeah, yours would.
Ouch, ouch.
I always imagine yours saying, can we have a divider, please? The little eyes peering out from the top of that bag saying, it'd be like...
they love it because they get to spend time together.
Yeah, a camera's not just for Christmas. I can almost see the advert.
No, you got it wrong. Cameras love to be together.
Would you treat your cameras like this?
Yes, quite right.
Help a camera find a home this Christmas. Give it a divider.
Velcro and dividers.
Yeah.
So my cameras would say ouch.
Would they?
Ouch, ouch. Every time I stick my memory cards in.
Yeah.
And what about that little funny button at the bottom to release the battery? What would it make then?
I don't want to think about the noise of that thing would make. God.
That's a very bizarre question.
Possibly
the first question we've ever had from Taiwan as well.
Yeah, no,
possibly.
Thank you very much for that. I think it was intriguing, calming, intriguing. There was so much going on. There was that question had depth.
Yes,
definitely.
Yes, like the memory card slot holders.
Right, interview time. This week, Jamie Stoker is back for part 2 of his chat with us about his photography as a respected fashion and portrait photographer. You'll remember that Jamie made the switch to Fujifilm, adopting early on the X Pro range, and he entered into a high-end shoot straight out the traps, literally a day after trading his DSLRs for the X Pro and one single lens. Jamie's now a Fujifilm X photographer, part of the ambassadorial lineup, and I was intrigued to know a little more about how this system swap worked out for him. I mean, he's a commercial shooter with a solid client list, which includes the likes of Adidas and Dior and Dazed and Confused, Burberry, Columbia Records, Universal, Nike, Vogue. So let's start out by finding out more on the hows and whys of what he chooses to shoot with.
Whenever I talk about like gear and obviously working as an ambassador and stuff, what I say to people is I'm a big believer in matching the right gear to your style of shooting. And I love now, obviously, with the GFX that we have this choice between, do you go big and focus on image quality and slow down slightly and adopt that medium format ethos where you're really focusing on the image above all else. And that's the kind of route I go when I'm doing a portrait or a commercial shoot, when I know I'm really focusing on the image and my subject and I have time to set up an image. But then if it's anything that's slightly more documentary or fast moving, I obviously use the X series. And my main setup for a lot of the backstage fashion week stuff that I do tends to be an XT3 I'm a big prime lens shooter, and so I have the XT3 with the 35 1.4 on my shoulder, and then around my neck I have the XH1 with the 56 1.2, and those are the two ones I'm using interchangeably just to get those slightly wider and closer up shots of the scene I'm shooting.
But if it's a portrait and you've got time, it's going to be a GFX. Is that 100 or 50?
50S, just because that's what I actually had this was obviously before I was an ambassador, but I had a Pentax 645Z that I was using in the days when I was working a lot with Burberry and we were doing, more kind of commercial stuff. And then when the GFX first came out, it was obviously a no-brainer to move on to that. So I think I was like one of the first people in the UK to buy a GFX 50S, and I've had it ever since. Although I actually really like the 50R. I think that's a lovely camera to hold and use, and for me it's kind of the closest thing to like a digital Mamiya 7 that I've come across. So I'm eyeing that up enviously, although with COVID times it's probably a hard justification.
Yeah. Well, we were originally going to chat about the XF50 lens, the F1 a couple of weeks ago. You were testing it out, but what did you find? It's a £1,500 lens. If I had the money, would I enjoy it if I could find the money?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I was someone who was really excited about the idea of it being a 33 50mm equivalent, and then I watched as it turned into the 50mm. And I think I saw on the website, yourself included, my main lens that I use is the 56 1.2. So again, I think that's one of the reasons they wanted me to try it out. And I would say that the thing that struck me most about it, and they mentioned this when they were talking about the design of the lens, is they were trying to kind of create that famous magical, hard to pin down look to the lens. And they said it's built in a similar way to the 35 1.4, which has always been one of my favorite lenses just for the look of the images. They have that slightly timeless look. And I saw that very much so in the images from the 50mm. The 56 1.2 is a lens I love, but it has quite a sharp, slightly, I don't know how to describe it, but in comparison to the 50mm, there's definitely more of an organic kind of timeless look to the images. And then when you add in the fact that you obviously have a slightly wider field of view and a faster aperture, and it's weather sealed, my main kind of takeaway, and as someone who probably will pick one up and thinking about how I would use it, is, as I mentioned, I'm often shooting with two bodies and a 35 1.4 and a 56 1.2 when I'm having to react to a scene. But if I was just doing a portrait shoot where I just wanted one body, one lens, I think the 50mm, because you're slightly wider and because it's so fast to focus and has that just sort of hard to pin down, amazing image quality, I think that would be a really tempting option as just like a one camera, one lens portrait option.
Well, I was going to talk about the speed actually, because if I was comparing it to a lens I used to use on my Canon system, the 85 1.2, I mean, that took an age to focus. I used to joke that you could bring up two kids and send them off to university in the time that thing took to lock focus. But the experience of this F1 is not that at all, is it? It's quick. Yeah,
it's super quick. Obviously in low light, it's amazing. We did a really nice shoot actually, because as much as possible, I like to kind of keep things relatively close to reality. So on that shoot, we actually had a friend of mine who's a really talented artist studying at the Royal Academy, and we had her working in this great museum in London that's kind of very dark and full of old statues and curiosities. And so it really gave us a chance to like put it through its paces. And yeah, I mean, that was one of my main takeaways, was just how reliable and fast it was, but also wide open at f1. I think I talked a bit about this maybe in the video, but in my past experience, whenever I had used like a super fast lens, whether in my rangefinder film days or trying various adapters, the image quality of those lenses almost had a softness that eventually, when the novelty ran out, you kind of lost interest in them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The 50mm f1, I shot the entire thing wide open for the entire day pretty much. And something about the image quality where it's somehow amazingly sharp and soft at the same time. And as I said, it doesn't have this slightly modern, crisp look that the 56 1.2 has. It has a more filmic, they talk about the way it was designed with smoother bokeh and stuff, and I definitely noticed that. So yeah, it's an intriguing lens. I think it's definitely for the slightly nerdy picture quality
with deeper
film.
pockets. Deeper pockets, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I heard you use a wonderful phrase, Jamie. You think of documentary work as curating normality. Oh, tell me that's your own, first of all, because I love that.
As far as I'm aware, it is, but
Good.
You know how the human mind works. There's a good chance I probably saw that in a book or somewhere and have regurgitated it. But yeah, it's definitely a mantra that I try and work along.
I love it. Do you think people want that more now in fashion and portrait than they ever did? Because do you think people are escaping from the contrived nature of photography and really wanting more of authenticity?
That would be nice if that's the case. I mean, obviously, the photographic industry and the marketplace as a whole is so huge. You know, for every photographer doing something naturalistic, there's probably another photographer doing something incredibly set up. Again, when I've talked in the past, I just talk about the fact that when you're working as a photographer, because it is this kind of marathon, not a sprint mentality, what really helped me along the sort of decade that I've been doing it is to find that way of shooting where I'm shooting in a way that stems from who I am as a person. And I'm quite a quiet, sort of chilled guy. I don't have that ability to walk onto a set with a huge team of people and create some amazing image from scratch. I'm much more observant, and so that's the style that I've tried to work within, and I think long term, you know, that's easier to maintain. And yeah, hopefully there is a demand for that, but I don't know if it's a case of like it's now in demand more than ever.
There's a certain who's who element to your portrait gallery. There's some very well known, very respected faces in there. I want to take you right back to the beginning though and try to chart some of this success. How did that all start to build, where you were being called in to do these celeb and VIP portraits?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very kind of slow process, gradually building momentum. And basically, once I graduated and I was back in London, I was kind of shooting like model test shoots and friends and family and just sort of like people I knew, and then shooting some smaller things for magazines. And I would say the two kind of early big step ups for me was that Nike project I mentioned earlier, and then also I got hired to shoot Will Ferrell around the time I think it was Anchorman 2 came out. That was my first kind of experience with shooting like a big A-lister and having to deal with PR and stuff. But yeah, it's just been a very gradual, taking the best part of 10 years to just slowly build up my clients and the people I've shot and the way that I shoot things to try and slowly draw it more into a niche where kind of people approach me for that style of shooting, which I feel stronger about now more than ever. And interestingly enough, it was actually when I started doing the Fashion Week stuff more regularly that helped me to really focus on my style and what I like to shoot.
There's a question I asked in magazines when established photographers are asked about their career progression. How would you go about launching yourself today in this time? And I wonder with your 10-year experience now and very well respected, certainly in the capital as well, what your answer might be?
Yeah, that's a good question. Something that I've found has helped me, and obviously in this age of social media and the internet, I do find it's easier more than ever to just kind of get stage fright and be constantly looking at a million different photographers every day and trying to compare yourself or copy others or be pulled in loads of different directions. And obviously over the course of the last 10 years, I've done a lot of that. I've done a lot of kind of going down one avenue and then realizing, no, that wasn't for me, and coming back to the center and then going off in another way. And I think the thing that helped me was to kind of at the end of every month think about what was the thing that I enjoyed most that I shot in the last month, and what was the thing that I really, would dread if someone asked me to shoot that again. And when you have that inspiration that comes from within, as opposed to kind of be overwhelmed by the amount of visual noise that's out there, I think that helps you to find your way a little bit more. So interestingly enough, as part of my lockdown keeping busy routine, I was recently doing there's a really good course that Magnum released with Alex Soth. I don't know if you come across it.
Yeah.
Photographic storytelling. And he talks a lot about that, about finding your own little pockets of inspiration that hopefully come from outside of photography, whether that be painting, movies, music. He talks a lot about how poetry has inspired him. And in my own experience, I was always really inspired by movies and cinematography. And I talked before about, like, when I'm shooting, I like to think of the shoot that I'm on as basically a film. And then I'm just pressing pause whenever it's a scene that I like the look of, which is a weird way of thinking about it. But that's kind of helped me. I basically I'm pressing the shutter when I have that cinematic buzz, and that's really helped me to kind of try and shoot in a way which was I never found it that interesting to look at photography as I'm shooting it. That's more something where when I have a quiet period, I'll go enjoy some photo books or an exhibition, which I'm doing a lot of at the moment because I'm not shooting so much. Well,
I mean, you mentioned it. When are you seeing the green shoots at all? Are you getting out there? Are there any commissions coming in now? I know the news changes week by week, so asking a question today about it, you never know what the rules are going to be next week. But what's happening in your world now?
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty brutal in the sense that a big part of my work at the moment is I spend 2 to 3 months each year covering fashion weeks, and I've already sort of lost 5 weeks of that in September and in the summer, where that kind of happened on a much more smaller scale, and a bunch of other jobs that got cancelled during the initial lockdown period. And sort of like nibbles where something might happen, but then due to COVID restrictions, it hasn't happened in the right way or whatever. So it's not been great, but I'm sort of trying to turn a negative into a positive, in the sense that, as I mentioned, obviously I've been working and slowly building up over the course of 10 years. And with this kind of enforced time out, I'm trying to look at things that I can do to kind of relearn and refresh. So I mentioned I was doing that Magnum course, which has been amazing. And I'm trying to shoot this personal project about Arsenal still, even though there's no matches or fans. I'm still kind of documenting life around the stadium during lockdown, which is actually kind of interesting in its own sense, because a lot of people are using the stadium as a public space to do exercise and do their daily walks and stuff. So yeah, just trying to kind of use the time wisely, and then hopefully as things open up, maybe into next year, normality will return. And
you'll be back to a rock concert in the Czech Republic.
Yeah, it's actually funny. When I was in Paris in February, which was obviously just as COVID was kind of exploding, and actually I had been in Milan that first weekend when they locked down this town outside of Milan that had one of the first outbreaks, and there was a lot of nerves within Fashion Month about it happening. But on my last month of Fashion Month in Paris, it just so happened that a really iconic extreme metal band, Napalm Death, I don't know if you've heard of them, but
not one of my regular Sunday listens, no.
Yeah. They were playing a gig at the Moulin Rouge.
Oh god, yeah. Well, I know the Moulin Rouge, yeah.
Yeah, so they have like a sort of nightclub bar.
I know
venue.
It, yeah.
And I just thought, like, I've worked really hard for a month, and this amazing band is playing, so I've got to go. But I remember being at that concert thinking, everyone's moshing and there's like sweat everywhere, and thinking, wow, it's probably not going to happen again for anytime soon. So that was the last concert I went to, and probably the last one I will have gone to until well into next year.
Well, we sincerely hope that it won't be long before Jamie is back in the mosh pit, and our thanks to him for his time. If you'd like to see more of Jamie's work, then go to jamiestoker.com. That's his website, easy as. Although, as always, find links to what you hear on the show at FujiCast.co.uk. Well, it seems the lockdown is starting again in many countries. It's already here. For some, of course, if you need your daily photography podcast fix during this time, then my other podcast, Photography Daily, is here to help out. Stories of life told by photographers. We start today with Denise Maxwell, who talks very appropriately about the first UK lockdown, although it could be internationally anywhere, that she feared would take her business. It didn't, and she explains why. Tuesday and Wednesday we have a two-parter with a very, very special guest. It's the exceptionally personal story of an international award-winning Reuters photographer based in Malta called Daron Zamitlupi. He's been making a photo story of his daughter Bex, who 1 year ago was diagnosed with a particular type of rare bone cancer. Now, she's been fighting this during lockdown too, where hospital visits changed dramatically, as you can probably understand. It's a story of how to make the most personal photo story, and not one to be missed. Then on Thursday, YouTuber Sean Tucker is back. He's going to talk about photography at this time in our history. It's quite a philosophical week on Photography Daily, which you'll find on all your main podcast apps and of course online via the photographydaily.show website. And some news of this podcast. Well, I'm able to add some thoughts to this podcast despite the recording being at the start of half-term holidays, because I make the show from my studio and Kev has always needed to travel here so that the quality production side stands up. He, of course, is not here. It's the Sunday night before the Monday release. And I wanted to add that, of course, from this Wednesday night, Thursday morning, in England, we're back in full lockdown, stay-at-home mode. Of course, there are people this morning, this afternoon, this evening and tonight suffering from this terrible virus, and some will lose their battles. So when talking about photography, it could seem inappropriate in any way, shape and form to bemoan our lot. The reality, of course, remains that there is still personal, financial and mental loss felt by many affected by these world lockdowns, and the arts have seen their fair share of casualties. The FujiCast will continue, but Kev and I will be doing this remotely from his place and me hunkered down in the studio this end, linking it all up and piecing it together for your enjoyment. Now, last time there was a lockdown, we went daily. This time we won't, as Photography Daily will be taking up that mantle. But we will, however, like to respond to your thoughts about the pandemic and how it affects you as a photographer. So send any questions to click@fujicast.co.uk. That's click@fujicast.co.uk. It can be camera-related questions, it can be Fujifilm-related questions, it could be business or personal questions or sharings in terms of how this whole thing is affecting you. Winter in, well, this hemisphere at least, is here, so your thoughts are important. Stay safe seems to be a buzz phrase, all too easily shared as an email signature these days, for good reason. But also, once again from Kev and I, same applies. Stay safe, keep sending us your mails and your comments, and we'll make sure that we keep our end of the bargain as long as we're able to by making quality content for photographers, no matter what badge is on the front of your box. Right, Kev, your question.
Okay, so I have one from Peter Ortman, who's from Belgium, and he says, "Hi both, I quite like your podcast."
Quite like.
But as a non-native English speaker,
yes,
it is not always easy to follow.
Ah, sorry. That's Kev.
But that helps me learn, he says.
He speaks Welshonese.
Welshonese, yeah. Quite like your interview and thoughts about photography. I have a wish for my Fuji cameras. I would love to be able to load into the camera a PNG file of the size of the sensor that the camera would overlay onto the EVF.
Yes.
This would allow me to overlay whatever reference lines I need. For example, I could define square lines for Instagram and 16:9 cinema portions to the same time. Or I would define a vertical proportion even when shooting horizontals, allowing to reuse the image in either way. Even proportions could be grayed out, but the final JPEG RAW would still be 100% available. So while I shoot, I can visually care about the different proportions. There's a lot of word proportions is in this, a lot. The overlay file could be stored on the SD card, or even many overlay files could be stored onto the cam, and then one chosen from, depending on the situation. Is this a good idea? Is it possible? What do you think, Peter?
Oh, that's a really good idea, by the way.
Well, you can do some of these things. So you've got
but you're limited to what Fujifilm give you.
Correct.
You can't make your own choices.
You can do 16:9. You can do square.
But say you wanted to do some of the other rules,
I mean, I agree. I mean, I've been asking for a long time for the Fibonacci spiral to be in the overlays. That would be ace. But yeah, I mean,
that would have to be a PNG.
I would imagine that's all they are, these things, PNGs. So yeah, I mean, I don't know whether they would, I really don't know whether it would be possible for things to be uploaded into the firmware of the camera. But certainly, I would like to see them have more overlays, like the Fibonacci spiral.
Because you could also use it to put text on there to remind you of things you need to capture and look out for in your images. There'll be so many different...
Stop falling asleep.
Yeah, that's it. Stop pretending that you're awake taking a picture of this speech.
Yeah. That's a good thing about masks, though, at weddings, isn't it? Because you can yawn during the speeches. Nobody notices.
Yeah, well, that's if you can shoot a wedding.
Yeah, true.
If it's not being broken up by the police, excuse me, are you having an illegal rave? No, it's a wedding. That's even worse. Come with me, sunshine.
So, yeah, there we go, Peter. I think some of the things you can do already, but I don't think that they would allow people to upload PNGs. Who knows? However, I agree with you that it would be nice to have more overlays. Definitely.
Do you get an opportunity to suggest these things to...
I've mentioned the overlays many times. Yeah, many times.
We shall consider.
Yeah. And I know other people have too. So, but that doesn't mean that there's priorities, and people often think, believe it or not, with the firmware stuff, that it's it's like, why haven't we got classic neg in XT3? It's in the XT4. It's in GFX 100. It's not just a simple case of pressing a button. It's a massive job. There's an entire team dedicated to it. And firmware writing is not the same as writing software for websites and for computers. It's a whole different ball game. So it's not as easy as it sounds.
But it's a good suggestion.
It is a very good suggestion, and I'm fully with Peter that our podcasts are not easy to follow.
Barry Paffy, our old mate Barry Paffy.
Yeah, good old Barry.
Hi Neil, hi Kev. I know this is probably the wrong time to be upgrading cameras, but I recently traded in some not so old kit, XT3, to get an XT4. I then used it at my third wedding of the year. Wow, you working weddings? Oof. Where'd you get one of those this time of the year? And I was so impressed I traded in more gear to get a second XT4. You're XT4'd up now, aren't you? The main reason for the second purchase was that I've been managing to book winter wedding work, and I'll be photographing stills as well as shooting video, and the XT4, in my opinion, is a perfect camera for the job. You're not wrong there. You're absolutely right, Barry. I've photographed many weddings and videoed a handful, but never both at the same time. To be honest, I'll only be filming the ceremony and speeches, so not the whole thing, but still a bit scary mixing the two disciplines. My question, have either of you been tempted to offer both stills and video as a package, same time? Yes, but I tell you what, it's so counterintuitive. One of them you're working with getting your shutter speed down, and the other one you're working with getting your shutter speed up, so your stills aren't all blurry. So I find it a bit of a counterintuitive thing, and the moment that you then put everything on automatic, well then, on
XT4 you can set up your stills and
you can do them separately. Yeah, that's true. Oh, my argument might be entirely shot out the water there then.
I have to say it fills me with dread, the thought of doing both.
I think you photograph and film in a totally different way. You look and you act and you approach the subject matter, I think, entirely differently when you're doing both. And does one suffer above the other? For me, it does. I think if I'm there doing video, I can concentrate and I'm looking at movement in a different way to the movement I would be recording or capturing as a stills photographer. I think I'd treat it in a different way, and I don't think I'd be able to do both as well.
I think the people that succeed with doing both the fusion stuff are two shooters. Teams.
Yeah. I think doing it on your Todd is I think you're always going to be making a compromise. I know there will be people here saying at the moment, no, not at all, but that's just.
Well, you're always going to be worried. So, for example, even if you're just doing static filming, what I call static filming, which is basically tripod at the end of the aisle, film the whole locked off. Yeah. Even if you're doing that and then you're off to the edge shooting stills on another camera, you're constantly going to be thinking, as the battery run out, has anybody kicked the tripod leg? Is it still, that kind of stuff.
Is it on? Is it in focus?
Yeah, all of that.
Is it tracking?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very difficult thing to do.
It fills me with the heebie-jeebies, that.
I did actually try to do it a few times. And I remember once coming back and looking at the video thinking, who's that idiot that's standing in front of the line of sight of that? And it was me. I thought, oh, God, you knew it was there and you still stood in front of it.
Yeah.
You donut.
Yeah.
Right, book time.
Book time. Okay, so this week we have William Gedney, Only the Lonely. 1950.
What?
Isn't that how it goes?
Oh, that's the title.
Yeah, Only the Lonely. 1955 to 1984.
Right.
Hardback. I've just checked on Amazon. It is available because I do often get emails from people saying, oh, books you can't get hold of. However, it does say 2 left in stock.
Get in there quick.
£30 thereabouts. No, so this again is all black and white, kind of Midwest American, Kentucky kind of area. As well, the date obviously says 1955 to 1984. It's retrospective of William Gedney's work, and according to the blurb, which I couldn't quite figure out in the images I was looking at, so it kind of doesn't kind of correlate in that respect. It's during a time when he was laid off and was documenting coal miners. But this book is, I think it's a bit of an amalgamation of all kinds of different work, because the book I'm looking at, the page I'm looking at on 112 is in India. So he did some time in India, and the interesting thing about this is that again it's all black and white, and right at the back of the book it goes through all of the plates and the print formats as well. So if you're interested in that stuff, which is quite nice.
Yeah. Extra info.
Extra info, get it here. But, it's the time, 69 to 71 here in India. He spent 2 years there, clearly. But this literally could be 1650, 1850, Like this is, India has changed so dramatically in the 20, 30, 40 years since then. Whereas if you look at the stuff so this next one here is Dublin, St Stephen's Green, which is a very famous part of Dublin. 1974, which is only 2 years later than that picture in India, and looks, apart from what people are wearing, doesn't look too dissimilar to what you're seeing now in Dublin. So again, there's a lot of kind of social documentary stuff going on here. People at beaches. I like the stuff in Ireland. It's got the old women nattering on the street corner there. I love that.
I love Ireland.
Yeah,
I love Dublin.
And well, those outskirts of Dublin are great, aren't they? Where I
don't think I've ever seen Dublin in focus.
They often have like 3 or 4 houses just in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I like it. And I mean it's another one of those books that it starts off with more of the Kentucky kind of Western stuff, but a lot of portraits of people, and it goes back to that thing we mentioned last week about people drinking beer and stuff. You get that. These guys, they're filthy. They're on a wrecked car, swirling Budweiser, of course. Got to be Budweiser.
Why has it got to be Bud?
Well, it's American, isn't it? That's what synonymous with it.
Right, okay.
I love this picture, though. Big Rock, Kentucky, July 15th, 1964. That looks like something out of Deliverance.
Does it? Let me have a look. It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
And that's because it was really like that, very abandoned cars, wooden shack house, dog barking. You can almost hear the scene looking at this picture. So again, it's a retrospective stuff. I think that's probably my favorite one. Big Rock, Kentucky, again, July 26th, 1964. The Cornett family is that little boy drinking from a teacup of water, stood on a tin pot, getting him up to the sink.
Fantastic. Look at that.
Yeah. There we go. William Gedney, Only the Lonely, 1955 to 1984. Yeah. Nice. Good stuff.
Perfect.
Like that.
Right, back to your questions. Jodie Stales has sent one in. Hi, Kev. Hi, Neil. Due to health problems, I'm considering adjusting my existing way of photography. After a brain trauma injury, sorry to hear that, Jodie, I notice more and more permanent difficulties in coordination, attention, performing multiple tasks as my working memory fills up quickly, etc. Multiple cameras, different lenses, different settings here and there just become too difficult. I'm wondering in which way a zoom lens can become part of the solution. Bert Stefani, good old Bert.
Big Bert.
I always expect that. Big Bert Stefani always confirmed to me that the 1655 is a very good lens. Do you agree? Currently I have a 35 at 56 and the X100F, which of course has the 23 on it. At the same time, I consider whether an upgrade to a different body could also offer more comfort while working. I have an XT1 an oldie, but my first Fuji camera, an X-T10 once as a backup, and an X100F, legendary, says Jody. A more modern camera can probably provide support in my photo work. How do you see that? There's another follow-up question to that, but let's deal with that first of all. 1655, first of all, I think we mentioned. Yes.
Yeah.
And we've already said that, so that would be the lens I would choose on my X Pro 3 if
that's
I was
the one
only
I'd
allowed
go
one.
for.
Yeah.
I think it's a fab lens.
It takes a little while to get used to using zoom again photographically. I mean, I use mine in video all the time. Love it. Perfect. But whenever I use a zoom in terms of stills work, it takes me a little bit longer to just to get to grips with. Do you find that? You don't really use them for stills, do you?
No, I don't. No. I do, but for the like the sports stuff, when I used to do the stuff for the Great Run Company and things, so I use the zooms for those. And the 1655 is particularly good for the wide angle stuff, and then I'll use the 40 to. No, that's 70 to 140, whatever that.
70 to 150.
70 to 150.
Yeah.
For the
50 to 140.
50 to 140.
Yeah, hello. Let's get this sorted.
Oh my God.
We know what we're talking about.
It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Yes. Welcome to the FujiCast.
50 to 140, which used to, I that was one of my biggest mistakes, was getting rid of that lens. Oh, I wish I had.
Did you have that, did you?
I had it. Yeah. And I just didn't use it. And you know what it's like. When you no longer have it, you think, oh, there's so many things I could use this for. I borrowed it, didn't I, to go to Africa with?
Oh, you borrowed my one. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I did give it back, by the way. And I did insure it.
I've definitely got that one. Yeah. But the 1655, that's smaller and lighter and probably more useful for kind of portraits, wide, landscapey stuff, streets, thereabouts. It's a tough one when you've got a physical disability, I suppose, that forces you down the line of using something specific.
It's quite light as well, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's not heavy,
quite light.
heavy lens, is it?
No. I think that would be the one. But it sounds like,
if you look at sort of, I suppose, the full frame equivalent of 2470, wouldn't it? I mean, some of those 2470 lenses are just so. I know the Canon one in particular, really good lens, but heavy as doorstop heavy.
Yeah, I mean. It does sound like, Jody, you've got quite a lot of gear anyway, so that lens, that 1655, will work across all of your old legacy bodies as well. The older ones. That's what I would probably pop for.
So there's a follow-up bit. I like to change my photometry and autofocus settings regularly. Furthermore, it is important to be able to quickly switch between certain modes where I can predefine as many settings as possible, like format, film simulation, light metering, autofocus. These seem to be conditions for being able to work comfortably again. Main focus is really on reportage, storytelling, portrait sessions, and in the future I might like to make more use of video, so maybe some insights on that as well. Well, I think, goodness, 1655 for me. Perfect lens for video work. Absolutely perfect. Say it again. Perfect. Yeah,
perfect. That's often the one I'll use when I'm doing videos as well. 1655. And what camera did you say she had? XT2.
Just put it on the floor now. Hold on.
Oh, Jody threw you in the bin already.
No, it was on the floor. I've done this question pile. Has the X100F and the XT1, she said. Yeah, XT1. XT10 as well, yeah.
Okay, so XT1, XT10. Both of those will have the XT1, you've got the photometry dial at the top, the collar, so you can flip between the metering very easily. I think on the XT4 that's disappeared, which I quite like that on the XT range. If you end up on the XT10, I don't think you've got a dial, so you might want to apply a function button to the photometry. Do you know what? I had 2 comments on my YouTube this week.
Were they nice ones, or
no?
Do we have to get a tin helmet on?
No. They weren't. They weren't aimed at me as such. So the first one was really aggressive, kind of. Why on earth do they call it photometry when everybody else calls it metering? That's how stupid Fujifilm is.
Ridiculous comment.
I know. And I was like, well, actually, I think technically it is called photometry, but, I get your point. It is different, but, they're not stupid. It's just a different thing.
There's a thing called Google.
And I'm like, why are you shouting at me?
Yeah.
And then another person wrote on a review I did of the XT100 a long time ago.
Hold on, stand by.
He goes, Every time I photograph white clouds, they're overexposed on my XT100.
Right.
And so I replied saying, well, that exposure is exposure. Try, either metering differently if you're using an auto mode or bringing the exposure down, exposure compensation. Maybe, you've got an electronic viewfinder so you can see the exposure. And he said, you do not understand, idiot. It's never overexposed on my Nikon cameras.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, okay, fair enough. So I just didn't bother replying to that
idiot,
one.
Did he?
Yeah, he said, go and see a shrink. I was like, oh. So people are like, there's nothing to do with me. You're like, I am not Fujifilm. Let's just get this straight. I am not Fujifilm. So shouting at me that they called it photometry is neither here nor there.
But also the stark rudeness of some people.
Go see a shrink.
Well, look, you're having a conversation.
I know, and I was helping him. I was giving him a very helpful feedback. It was like, okay, the exposure is... This is how
I don't know what Nikon
it.
does within the body. Maybe it does something very magical within the body to bring everything into perfect exposure, or whatever. But I doubt. Well, let me give it. I doubt Ansel Adams, for example, had some of the electronic wizardry to help him get this right, and he would have had a situation where clouds and skies could have been a little bit overexposed had he not actually done the work that he did, the progressive work that he did throughout his career to work out how to sort that problem out.
I know.
Thank God he didn't have a YouTube channel. Can you imagine dullards like that getting in touch with Ansel Adams and calling him an idiot?
I know.
Listen, Adams, who do you think you are?
I am Ansel, the zone maker.
Yeah. Have we got time for one more?
This is from Chuck Nick Norris, and he says...
Is it Chuck Norris again?
Chuck Norris again. Chuck Nick Norris.
Yeah.
I'm using the X Pro 3. What are my gear options for fashion shows? Hang on, didn't he ask us last week what his options were for doing film sets?
Yeah.
Chuck Nick Norris, you're doing too much work.
Yeah, well, it's good.
Yeah, no, it's
good for you.
What are my gear options for fashion shows? Not sure what off-camera flashes I'd need. No, Jamie talked about fashion shows.
He doesn't use a lot of flash to be fair. He can, but he loves using his X Pro range actually, and his work has very much become, as you've heard him talk about, his work has become very, very documentary in style. Yeah, and so
Well, if I was, let's just say somebody said to me, right, Mullins, get off your great big bum and go and photograph this fashion shoot tomorrow.
Yep.
I would take, and I've got an X Pro 3. I would take 1655. I would also take a fast prime telephoto type length, so 56 1.2.
Yep. Which I believe Jamie loves as well.
Flash, I would take the Godox Niwa Thing X430 FX.
Right, I'm not very familiar with the Godox stuff.
I've got one of them.
Yeah.
Might need to find out where it is and charge it.
You didn't throw that one away as well, have you?
I kept the manual for that.
I tell you what, listeners, a couple of weeks ago I asked him for the Ranger series Elenchrom that he had. He said, I'd thrown it out down the tip.
I did.
I said, you've done what? I was going to offer you at least 25 quid for that.
I did.
So is that your suggestion for him? Get the Godox and the...
I think, well, there are better people to talk about than Flash, but yes, I think the Godox is the preferred gear of choice right now.
Super. All right, well, that's it for another week. Thank you very much for joining us. If you'd like to keep sending your questions in, please do. They are the lifeblood of the show. And you can send them in to click@fujicast.co.uk, or you can send them in via the Facebook page. Do not forget to go to the show page.
Yes.
Kev puts all the links there diligently each week, and then you just don't go there.
Every Monday morning I'm sat there on that website waiting for you to turn up, like I'm sat in my own kitchen party by myself.
In his underpants.
In my underpants, drinking a glass of wine, and nobody is there, and it's 7:30 in the morning.
See? Now that's how important it is. So make sure you go there. Because he actually does. Do you actually watch the figures coming as?
Yeah, well, exclusively. Sometimes I don't even go to bed on a Sunday night because I'm so excited.
Refresh.
Yeah.
Refresh.
That's it. Those of you that are on the Patreon, of course, you don't need to go to the website. It doesn't matter because we just love you always.
Of course. Music from Blue Wednesday, supporting music from the incredibleartlist.io. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.